Hi, everyone. Matthew DeSantis here with NYRA Bets, here with another Breeders' Cup Classic Contender Spotlight Series, and this one is on Sierra Leone. Now, before we get to that, want to make sure to remind you to press the like button and subscribe to NYRA Bets YouTube today. We have these Contender Spotlights videos. We also have trainer-by-trainer analysis for the major barns and their historical success at the Breeders' Cup and looking at their 2024 contenders. Oh, by the way, we also have some reaction to Monday's post-draw. That'll be up as well. And in addition to that, we're going to have two special episodes capping the card, one specifically focused on Juvenile Friday, the other focused on Breeders' Cup Saturday for the Classic Day. So want to make sure to press that subscribe button. Subscribing is completely free of cost, just notifies you when the new videos are dropping on the channel. All right, well, like I said, we're going to talk about Sierra Leone today, and this is a horse that I have a feeling a lot of bettors are abandoning and jumping ship on because he is a horse that is supremely talented. He is a horse that has never missed the board. He is also a horse that has disappointed as your betting line favorite the last couple of times out. And so I think there is a little bit of buyer's remorse here with Sierra Leone. And now might this finally be the time that he's able to come through and get the win? We'll have to see. He's an intriguing horse because of his late running style. That does not necessarily suit well for Del Mar, where historically it has been difficult to see horses make up ground going two turns on the dirt. Now, we'll dive into some track stats on that point as well, talk about it as it relates to how Del Mar plays in general, and then also talk a little bit about how it plays during the Breeders' Cup when they've hosted it in years past. But Sierra Leone, you can't deny that he is a good-looking racehorse. If you've ever seen him in the paddock, my gosh, he is a picture of what a horse should look like. He is big, he is imposing, he is physical, he's a little bit ornery. He had a little bit of a dispute with Forever Young in the Kentucky Derby. He's a horse that, has the right attitude in a lot of ways, but does he hang sometimes? I think there's some lingering questions on Sierra Leone. But from a profile standpoint, trained by Chad Brown. He's about a 13% trainer at the Breeders' Cup, has had success in big races. Obviously, is best known for his great turf horses, but this year, he's got a lot of great dirt contenders, not just Sierra Leone. Obviously, his domestic product in the Dirt Mile, has Chancellor McPatrick in the Juvenile. So he's got a lot of really great dirt horses this year. Will be jockeyed by Flavian Pratt. This was a little bit of a jockey change in the middle of the year, had been with Tyler Gaffalione. Gaffalione off the mount, Pratt on the mount, and has been going over ever since. Sired by Gunrunner, Damn His Heavenly Love. This was a $2.3 million purchase. Amazingly, he has actually won all of that money back on the track. He has earnings of over $2.3 million to this point in his career. That said, he has not necessarily won as much as a horse of his caliber has people have thought he should win. Maybe it's just falling short of exceeding expectations and has not won since the Toyota Bluegrass down at Keeneland earlier this spring, has also won the Risen Star down at the fairgrounds. So you like the fact that he's won at different tracks, right? He's won at Belmont, or he's won at Aqueduct basically during the winter meet there. He's won down at the fairgrounds. He's won at Keeneland. So he's won at a few different tracks. Ran second in the Remsen, very famously to Dornick, where Dornick came back on him on the inside rail. He was kind of a running against the track bias that day. In the Kentucky Derby, finished second by a nose while battling Forever Young down the stretch, falling just short of getting there to beat Mystic Dan. Finished second in the Jim Dandy, and then finished third in the Belmont Stakes and the Travers. Like I said, has never missed the board in 8 career starts. An incredibly consistent horse, but again, one that has been overbet, I feel like, at times. And I think as a result, a lot of bettors are, like I said, jumping ship on him. And so you can see here, one of the things that is impressive, and I know every speed figure is a little bit different. If you're using Brisnet, might show you something a little bit different. If you're using Equibase, might show you something a little bit different. If you're looking at DRF and you're looking at buyer speed figures, one of the things that is incredibly impressive about Sierra Leone is he has never taken a step back from a speed figure standpoint in his career. He has gotten progressively faster or maintained his speed in every single race of his career. 71, 91, 95, 98, 99, 99, 102, 109. So he has gotten faster and better in every single start. The frustrating part is the last 4 times out, he's come up short. Obviously, he was a relatively short price in the Kentucky Derby. Fierceness was your favorite that day. He ran really well in terms of Sierra Leone did. Comes back in the Belmont, and everybody goes, well, it's a mile and a quarter. He's going to like the distance. And comes up a little bit short, kind of flattens out there in the stretch, and his Mind Frame and Dornick kind of battling down the stretch. And the Jim Dandy was double-digit lengths back again and comes up short, makes his charge at Fierceness, but ultimately comes up short. And then I was among the many who thought the Travers was going to be his race. That was the race that I thought he was kind of bred to win. It's going a mile and a quarter. I thought there'd be ample pace in that race with Batten Down going to the front and Dornick and Sierra Leone or Dornick and Fierceness and Torpedo Anna chasing. And there was a good pace, but Fierceness was the one who was able to put him away on the front end and hold off Torpedo Anna. Ultimately, Sierra Leone makes his run as he always does, but comes up a little over a length short. So, what do you do with a horse like this that has this really late running style? And again, this is a challenge at the Breeders' Cup. If you look at the summer meet at Del Mar and how the track played in the summer, and I know there are people listening right now who will go, Matthew, the track plays a little different in the fall. And they're absolutely right. It does play a little bit different in the fall. The weather is a little bit different. The moisture in the track, just the dew point is a little bit different. So it does affect the track in some ways. I won't get into tidal patterns. I don't necessarily believe in that. But that said, I do know that the track plays a little different in the fall. But what we have to go on is how it plays in the summer from this past year. Going 2 turns on the dirt, there was a sufficient sample size there, and only 5% of horses won from more than 3 lengths back going 2 turns on the dirt. It just was not a winning trip. You rarely saw horses make up ground at Del Mar. It was a bit of a conveyor belt. Now, I will say it was much more of a conveyor belt early. You got a few more winners later in the meet. And so I think at one point it was actually 0%. And then there were a couple of winners and managed to bump it up to 5 by the end. So maybe it was getting a little bit more fair as the meet continued. But bottom line is it's a speed favoring track, and it always has been. Now, on the flip side, in the 10 dirt route races that have been run at Del Mar when it hosted the Breeders' Cup in 2017 and 2021, like I said, 10 overall dirt route races those 2 years, 40%, 4 out of the 10 winners came from more than 3 lengths back at the half-mile mark. Now, again, why could that be? A couple of reasons. One, in Breeders' Cup races, there tends to be maybe a little bit more of a hot pace, that you will get a more contested pace, a hotter pace, because you have all these horses coming from all over the world. They all have very, in some cases, similar running styles of wanting to get to the front. This often can push a very aggressive pace when you're going 2 turns, and it opens things up for closers. All you have to do is think about the 2021 Breeders' Cup Distaff, won by Marche Lorraine, flying in from off the pace after they set absolutely nuclear fractions up front early in that one. So that's certainly something to consider. The other thing to consider is fields are just naturally more strung out at the Breeders' Cup than they are during the Del Mar meet. During the Del Mar meet, you might have, I think, somewhere between 7 and 8 horses in terms of an average number of entries per race. So when you have 7 to 8 horses, and that number is actually even a little bit lower on dirt, usually it's somewhere between 6 and 7 on dirt. So if you're looking at an average of, let's just say, 7 horses in a dirt race, they're going to be clumped up a little bit more closely as a result of that. They're not going to be this huge strung out field. Now you come to the Breeders' Cup and suddenly you're getting 10, 12, 13, 14 horse fields. That changes the dynamics considerably. And now, naturally, in a 13 or 14 horse field, fields are going to be more strung out. And a horse could be sitting 4 lengths back that is more of a traditionally a kind of stalking horse and can still make that run from 4 lengths back. And so again, when you're looking at, horses coming from off the pace, you really do need kind of a nuclear pace for them to close from the clouds, but you have seen horses make up ground on that track going 2 turns in the Breeders' Cup. Again, how it played in the summer, you would say this is going against Sierra Leone big time here. Now, one of the things I will say about Sierra Leone, and we're going to watch a couple of his races here in a second, is there's also been a prevailing sentiment that perhaps Sierra Leone just did not like Saratoga. And didn't like the dirt up there, didn't like the kickback, didn't like the trips. And he would not be the first horse not to necessarily like the, the dirt and the main track up at Saratoga and maybe facing the kickback from up there. So maybe you get him out of Saratoga and he's going to appreciate that a lot more. He's not going to be as bothered by the kickback, etc. We'll have to see how he takes Del Mar and obviously keep a close eye on some of those early morning works that are going to be taking place this week out there. You could also make the counter argument that Fierceness, on the other hand, his 3-year-old rival, absolutely loves Saratoga. That's where he runs his best races. So some horses love it. Some horses might not like it as much. But Sierra Leone, certainly a very talented one. Now, we'll take a look at the Bluegrass. And this is a little bit of a longer replay, but you'll see him, pardon the saddle towel colors, but you'll see him in the dark silks coming up here on the outside, making a move around the turn. And I think that's the key for him in this race is you have to make an earlier move at Del Mar. I think you have to make a move even earlier than he did here. Here he is in the stretch now, and this is when he was still younger and had these lugging in problems where he would really lug in on horses and really kind of go over towards the rail. And you can see he's coming over several paths here as he's coming down the stretch. But there is no doubt that once he starts moving, he is an unstoppable force. And when he gets hit astride to full extension, he can be very dominant. But the key is he's going to have to make a move early on the turn because you can't come for home and give yourself that much work to do going against this caliber of competition and expecting everybody to back up on a track where speed generally gets held up on the front end. So you're going to have to make that move around the turn so that when you hit the top of the stretch, you only have maybe 3 or 4 horses to run down, not 8 or 9 horses to run down. And that's been the challenge. Now, in the Kentucky Derby, we're going to watch this race. And again, he's kind of in the right position here. He's on the outside, and he's made that move around the turn. You see he's on the far outside here. Now, him and Forever Young are just going at it. And this is just a personal match race. And Mystic Dan is kind of an afterthought at this point, even though he ends up winning. But Forever Young and Sierra Leone are just battling each other down the stretch, trading paint. And again, Sierra Leone continuing to kind of lug in here and making up ground as much as they can. Basically a 3-way photo finish at the wire between those 3. An incredibly impressive run coming from off the pace, although I will say it was a very hot pace that day. So will Sierra Leone get the right setup on Breeders' Cup Saturday? I think that's a fair question to ask. Arthur's Ride's going to go to the front. I can't imagine they're just going to cede the lead to Arthur's Ride in terms of Fierceness wanting to go, a horse like City of Troy probably wanting to be prominent. I think certainly Highland Falls is a horse that probably wants to be pretty close. A horse that people aren't really talking about. A horse like Newgate might want to be, somewhat close. Mixto might want to try to be close and might be a little bit of an X factor in terms of the early pace scenario. And then you have the Japanese, I think Forever Young and Dermasotogake, both of which like to traditionally sit pretty close to the pace. Forever Young's just got gait issues. That's been his biggest bugaboo to this point. If he can clean up the gait issues, he likes to be prominent in a race. So the question is, if he can break cleanly, where does he sit? Dermo, we know, likes to go to the kind of towards the front of the field. So there's going to be some pace up in front of Sierra Leone for him to close into. However, I do think it's noteworthy if we watch here the Travers, this was his last effort. And again, coming wide as he always does. And Fierceness is lone speed up there. But notice it's Torpedo Anna, not Sierra Leone, who's making up all of the ground on Fierceness here in the stretch. And yes, Sierra Leone's making his run like he does, but it's ultimately Torpedo Anna who's got even more of the kick and more energy here coming to the wire, and the one who got closest to potentially beating Fierceness that day, while Sierra Leone finishes third. So again, a talented horse, a horse that has a lot of ability, has never run a bad race, you could say, but a horse that, while as a betting line favorite, as a post-time favorite, has not delivered the last few times out in the Belmont, in the Jim Dandy, in the Travers. So I would expect you will get an honest price on him because Fierceness is going to be more heavily favored. City of Troy is going to be more heavily favored. I would imagine Forever Young is going to be more heavily favored. And then you have to wonder, is he going to be 4th choice? Is he going to be 5th choice? Is a horse like Highland Falls going to be maybe more of a price than Sierra Leone? Is a horse like, I don't know, some of these other runners, even from over in Japan, is an Ushba Tesoro, is a Dermasotogake going to be more of a a betting interest? Is a horse like Next going to be more of a betting interest than Sierra Leone? It'll be fascinating to see, because I do think the top three in terms of betting interests are pretty clear. Where Sierra Leone falls, I think, is a huge X factor. If he's at like 8-1, 10-1 range, he's an interesting horse at the very least, even if he is running against the track, running against some biases. He's going to get the pace, because there's always a strong pace in the Breeders' Cup. Whether or not he can take advantage of it is another question, but he is an impressive horse. He is an impressive specimen. He's never run a bad race. He's one that I'd probably include on all my vertical tickets for sure, because he's going to make his run. He's going to pick off horses that don't like that 1.25 miles, of which there will be several, I should say, in this race. So again, a really fascinating horse to consider in the 2024 Breeders' Cup Classic. Well, thanks so much for tuning into this episode of Breeders' Cup Contender Spotlight Series. Make sure to press that like and subscribe button here on NYRA Bets YouTube, and make sure to play the Breeders' Cup on NYRA Bets. My name is Matthew DeSantis, wishing you a great and prosperous day at the races, and reminding you, friends, it's now post time.